With the NHL playoffs coming upon us at the moment, the Ottawa Senators are currently outside looking in, but with a hot stretch recently, are finding their way in. And joining me today is a friend of the podcast, Alex Adams, who covers the Ottawa Senators for Sportsnet. Thanks, Alex, for joining me today. How are you?
Thanks, man. It's a long time no see. It's great to be on and talking about the Senators, who have been, let's just say it's been a crazy year here in Ottawa, but excited to chat with you.
Obviously, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. We obviously, my brother, my co-host, and I, we try our best to watch it as much as we can, but the Sens were haven't really come upon us until this latest stretch here post Olympic break. And I just want to ask you generically off the bat, how, based on preseason expectations, how do you think the Sens season has been going so far?
Based on preseason expectations, I think in a lot of ways it's been such an up and down year for the Senators, but they're on pace for a little bit more points than they had last year. And I think that's kind of where they were supposed to be in terms of being a wild card team / maybe third in the Atlantic. It sounds like it's unlikely that they're going to get an Atlantic spot. At the same time, just because the East is so good this year and everyone's just on pace for 100 points, they've, in a sense, have taken a step back, and ultimately we'll see if they make the playoffs. But at the same time, they are playing really good hockey. I think they have the 13th best record in the NHL. So it's not like they're a bad team by no means. And, it's been a crazy year from off the ice with Allmark, with Team USA stuff, to then them not getting to save for long stretches, to major injuries, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. But all in all, this team has fought till the bitter end, and there's still 9 games left to kind of write their story of the 25-26 Ottawa Senators.
So I just want to say one thing. A couple of weeks ago, obviously, we dropped our ultimate who's going to make the playoffs. I'm going to say, for me, I have Ottawa getting in. That was one of my bolder ones. I had Ottawa and Columbus getting in, ultimately, with Boston and Detroit missing. And over on the West, I have Winnipeg going in as well, as a hot take type vibe. But I think the surprising thing was because at the preseason as well, I had Ottawa in, and I had Montreal taking a step back because I thought they were slightly younger. But what Montreal has done this year has obviously been amazing. I don't think anyone expected Buffalo to be the first seed right now for the Atlantic. I think a lot of that has to do with obviously Florida taking a step back, Toronto taking a step back this year as well. So ultimately, if Ottawa does miss, how much of it is a missed opportunity? Because we expect Florida to be back next year as well. And then the rise of Buffalo, the rise of Montreal, even teams in the Metro that are probably going to take another step forward next year as well.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be a missed opportunity, because I think if the Senators do get into the playoffs, they're going to be in this spot where I think it's funny. If you look at all the projections from Money Puck to other sites, the Senators are one of the highest chances to make the finals and even win the cup. I think they have like the 8th or 9th best odds, even though they're out of a playoff spot right now. Yeah. And that's because the analytics, the way they play, how they dominate games, they dominate the shot kind of counter, would indicate that they're a really good team and better than their record would state. The problem is they just need to get in. And if they don't, I think if you're Steve Staios, you look at this season, you say to yourself, you know what? Everything did not break our way, from injuries to off ice to Linus Hallmark struggling to then leaving. And, there's been some more Hallmark stuff chatter in this market after last night's game or yesterday afternoon's game with him not playing. But I think if you're Staios, you feel pretty confident that the team you iced is really, really good and just got almost a comedy of errors go against them with the Atlanta. They could be the best team to miss a playoff spot in the history of the NHL if they get to 97 points, which is what they're projected to get to right now. So that and they're outside of a playoff spot right now as we speak. So they're a really good team, and they've been getting more saves now. But I think if you look back at this team, if you're Steve Staios at the end of the season and you miss it, you say, okay, this was a year from hell, and let's put more chips kind of on the table, go more all in going into next year, because I think next season they will be one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference, and not, let alone the NHL.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of last year's Western Conference race where, like, I think Calgary missed out on 96, 97 points. The Canucks missed out on 92 points. And this year, teams with like high 80s are going to get in on the Western Conference, which is like, I don't think any other team in the Pacific really deserves to get in the way have they've been playing them for most of the year as well. Obviously, surprise in Anaheim as well. But like Vegas, right before we hit record, had made the crazy, shocking news following the Denver Nuggets and the Memphis Grizzlies from last year firing their head coach, but bringing in John Tortorella, which I know it's a different story, but it's just crazy how that side ended up going. But you alluded to goaltending. And obviously at the beginning of the year, like the defensive metrics, I think were really good. Like it was when I watched Ottawa play, like they were really good offensively. Obviously Brady Tkachuk missed some time to start the year as well. But is the number one reason goaltending why Ottawa is in this situation right now? Because they couldn't get that save from whoever was their goalie at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, their goaltending until basically since the Olympic break was lost them probably 10 to 15 points, maybe even more, honestly, because they literally at one point in January were about 500 and they had the worst goal team save percentage of all time if it had held on. Obviously it's gone up a little bit. I think they're now 30th in team save percentage, but I'd have to double check. So they've been one of the best defensive teams in the last month or two, and that's partially because the goaltenders have been better, but honestly, they've just been good to adequate, where before they were all-time bad, right? So I think you're right. And Allmark obviously left the team because of a mental health matter that he attended to. He's now back, although he didn't play on Saturday because he was too tired or dealing with fatigue, according to Travis Green. But at the same time, he's paid a lot of money to be a guy that plays through being tired because he makes $8 million a year to be the starting goaltender. And so his absence, I don't think Reimer lost them that game, for example. At the same time, they need their starting goaltender to be available. And he's only played 42 games this year. And their record with him in the lineup is incredibly good. They'd be on pace for about 105, 110 points. So if he was playing close to 60 games, that would be a different conversation. And I'm not trying to diminish what he dealt with in terms of mental health. That's real. And obviously, I hope he's feeling better right now. At the same time, if they don't know about his availability, and also he hasn't been Vezina caliber until actually very recently, he's played really well. Just everything around Allmark, some of it out of his control and some that admirably he's trying to deal with in terms of his mental health. But another part of that is just his play and lack of availability for a multitude of reasons. So if Allmark played 60 games or 55 games, the Senators would probably be close to the top of the Atlantic Division right now.
What's his public fan perception like? Because like isn't in the offseason, do you think Steve Staios is going to go for that? How he had Swayman in Boston, for example, like that, just get that, or Kevin Lankin and Thatcher Demko, what was the plan for the Canucks to that thing, to get a backup that at least, hey, we know that Allmark is going to miss a certain amount of time. Let's go get a guy that could be that backup that will come in and you have confidence in.
I definitely think they will. I think this season showed you that for many reasons, Allmark needs to be in a tandem as the 1A guy at the very least. I think James Reimer's come in. He's been a veteran presence. His numbers haven't been great, but he's, he has had a good stretch and he's won more games than he's lost as an Ottawa Senator, and he's just been stable. And that's ever since they signed Reimer, that coincides with the Senators rising up the standings and going on this run. So I don't know if it's Reimer, maybe it's Stuart Skinner, who's played pretty well in Pittsburgh of late, after leaving Edmonton in one of the worst trades you'll ever see.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of where they'll go, or maybe they try to replace Allmark. I don't know. I think they're in a spot where, depending on how this season ends up, right? Like they could go to the conference finals. Allmark's amazing, and okay, we need to get a backup or a 1B type of guy, but you believe in him, or they putter out. Allmark plays bad down the stretch in the last final games, and then you have a question on your hands with Allmark. So they're in a conundrum with the goaltending, and it feels like deja vu all over again here in Ottawa with goalie crises. But the good news is the team in front of their goalies has been spectacular. There's a couple things they definitely need to improve upon, but they're a really good hockey team that if they also maybe had Jake Sanderson and Thomas Chabot healthy the past stretch,
Yeah.
might already be 3-4 points clear of a playoff spot. And so those injuries have not helped either.
Yeah, like for me, in my personal opinion, like if Ottawa gets in, I don't think it's an easy team. Like if they end up being a wildcard team, Tampa or Buffalo, whoever wins that Atlantic, or then Carolina, because in my opinion, Carolina has the most pressure this year to get to the final because of what Florida's out of the playoff spot. But the way that this Ottawa Senators team plays, it's like, oh, okay, like it's not going to be an easy out for the most part. Because like I could legitimately see this team getting to the conference finals depending on how it shapes up. Because Tampa, obviously, at the end of the day, what Kucherov is doing, and they have Vasilevsky, who's in the Vezina running as well. They're going to be probably the favorites out of maybe coming out of the East as well. But like this team, in my opinion, has a legitimate chance. It kind of reminds me of the Blue Jays from when they first got George Springer, when the COVID thing, where they just missed out by like one game. This is what the Senators team will feel like, that like, oh, if we just got in, who knows how special it could have been for them.
I just hope the next season doesn't look like the Jays 2022 season.
Yeah.
That felt like a bit of a season from hell as well. But on that, I think you're right. I think outside of Tampa Bay, if the Senators get in, I think the Senators are probably even favorites to very strong puncher's chance in any series. I like them against Carolina. Carolina, really good team, but they don't have that many superstars. Brandon Bussy's been struggling. They haven't played well against a lot of good teams this season. If it's Buffalo, they're PDO Warriors. The analytics tell you that they shouldn't be where they're at. I think they're a really good team and a playoff team, but I don't think they're 105 points or whatever they finish with type of team. And so I think if it's Tampa, you don't like your chances. If it's anyone else, I think, and even against Tampa, I think Ottawa can play with them. And I think in a sense that could be the two best teams in the East playing each other in the first round if that were to happen, just with how good both teams have been analytically speaking and just dominating opponents throughout the entire season.
I would love to see like a Montreal matchup too, because it's just going to be a fun Canadian matchup and a young, fun team and led by Nick Suzuki over there as well. But the other key thing for this season, like you alluded to earlier, the injuries. So like Brady Tkachuk missed time at the beginning of the year. I think we said right now Chabot recently got hurt. Sanderson, is Sanderson still hurt?
Yeah, he might be back tomorrow or Tuesday. He separated his shoulder about 3 weeks ago, but he's been skating. And if he comes back, that's a complete game changer. Since Chabot went down earlier last week, Ottawa went from caving every team in to getting caved in. But if you have Jake Sanderson, I think he's the best defensive defenseman in the league, and that's not to take anything away from his offense. That's really special as well from a defenseman, but he's just such a good player. And if you throw him on this team with just one of the deepest forward groups in the league, I think I really like their chances of getting on a run and making it into the playoffs down the stretch here. If he can't play in the next game or two, they're going to really struggle to find points and collect points because they have a pretty tough schedule until their last 2 or 3 games of the season.
So is he the best player on the Senators, or would you give that title to Tim Stützle or even Brady Tkachuk?
I think Brady Tkachuk's had a weird year. He had a game against the Islanders after playing a terrible game against Washington the night before, about a week ago. And he was just a man possessed. And that looked like the Brady Tkachuk. He fought Anders Lee from the puck drop and scored the game-winning goal with 11 seconds left. And since then, he's been pretty good as well. But that kind of the part of Tkachuk when he's at his best, he's emotionally involved in games. And I think too many times he's been, people will say passenger or whatever, but he just hasn't looked himself. Even though he's producing well, he's almost a point per game player. But just almost like the heart of him hasn't been kind of fully shown out and shown through this season. But the past couple games as Ottawa's kind of come into a playoff race and really you can like touch and feel the playoffs, he's elevated his game. But I think on the season, Jake Sanderson and Tim Stützle are 1A, 1B. It depends how you look on it. I think in a sense, because of Ottawa's center depth, I think Sanderson's more important to the team. Just plays so many minutes. He's so versatile. He's such a one-man zone exit. Like he's just such a good hockey player. And Tim Stutz has been an absolute dog. I think he's been unbelievable this year. If he had a bit more finishing help around him, he'd probably be closer to 100 points than maybe 80, 85. But those two players have been just unbelievable for the Sens. And I think if Ottawa can get in, Brady Tkachuk will probably liven up a little bit. And that's a pretty good three-headed monster, if you ask me.
So I want to expand on Brady Tkachuk a little bit more. Obviously, like I said, I haven't tuned in much to the Sens as much as I hoped for. But when I am on social media sometimes and I'm looking, I'm seeing a lot of either fans or analysts or whatever the case might be saying that, oh, he's just too focused on Team USA at the moment. Like he doesn't want to go hard because, there's nothing wrong with representing your country. Obviously, how he's a proud American. He's his brother, and obviously a lot of the Americans are, rightfully so, should be having their head held high, winning the gold medal. But when it comes to the perception of him from the fan base, obviously the rumors from last year, I think it was, or the year before, about the New York Rangers.
Yep.
I saw some of the talks where, maybe Tkachuk wants out and wants to go somewhere in America again. How is his perception amongst the fan base? He is the captain, obviously, of a Canadian market, like him, Matthews, before Quinn Hughes got traded, Quinn Hughes as well, like 3 American big captains as well. But like, how is he perceived? Like, what do you say his future is like as an Ottawa Senator?
It's going to be interesting. I think, I don't want to get too much into the political theater of the U.S. winning the gold, and people can Google it, and probably people watching the show know what I'm talking about. I think it plays a part, and I think the fans, because of everything between Canada and USA and the political matter, I think it's gone into the fan base, and people that feel a certain way about Brady and vice versa. At the same time, I do think the way this team's trending right now, especially going into next season, where I think they could be an absolute wagon. Like I think they could be a 110-point team if they get goaltending, honestly, and relative health. And then in the playoffs, you never know what happens. I think for me, you look at Quinn Hughes in Vancouver, right? If the Canucks are a contender, if they are what they looked to be 2 years ago when you guys were a game away from the Western Conference Finals, Quinn Hughes is probably not asking for a trade. Maybe he does, but the likelihood is way lower than it was where the team's a complete tire fire, as you guys know, right?
Yeah.
And I think the Sens aren't going to be in that position. They're going to be a really good team. They might even be a cup contender team by the time his contract ends, or by the time you have to figure out an extension, not this summer, but the following summer. So for me, that's your best selling point to Tkachuk, is like, this group, you're really close to being a cup contender, stay here and try to win a cup. And maybe he signs a Matthews type contract where it's like, or a McDavid type, where it's like a 2-year extension or a 3-year extension, or maybe a 4-year extension. I doubt he signs a long-term deal in Ottawa. If the team struggles, doesn't make the playoffs this year, is teetering at the deadline next year, or even early in the year where they're already out of a playoff spot, I'd be shocked if that was the case. But if it is, then we might see a Quinn Hughes situation on our hand, and I don't blame him. Like, he's been in the league for 8-9 years now. He's made the playoffs once. If they miss it this year, like, why not try to go somewhere else and try to win a cup? And he's obviously a proud American. I know he loves being in the States and being American, and I don't blame him for that. So for me, if the Senators keep winning, this is going to be much more of a really fascinating endeavor. The more they start to lose, I think that's where it's unlikely for him to stay. And again, I don't blame him for that, because he deserves to be on a winning team, because he just hasn't been for so long, and most of that has been nothing to do with him as a player.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you this question. Like, I don't know how overrated being a captain is in a Canadian market, or just a captain in general for your team, because like ultimately Quinn Hughes got out. Whether he asked out or not, like Canucks traded him, right? Austin Matthews might be in a similar situation with Toronto. Obviously, we're talking about Brady Tkachuk now. And then obviously we have leadership factors with Hellebuck and Kyle Connor for Winnipeg. Obviously Cole Caulfield, Lane Hudson is going to be the same case for Montreal, Dustin Wolf for Calgary, so on and so forth, whether they wear the C or A or not. Your opinion, how much does he value being the captain of the Ottawa Senators, which is the nation's Canada's capital, and he happens to be in America?
Yeah, I think it matters a lot to him that he wears the C. I don't think he's ever taken that for granted. I do think, kind of from what I said from the top of it, everything that transpired between Canada, USA, I think that's changed the whole dynamic of it. I think if you asked me this question 2 years ago, I'd be wholeheartedly loves being in Canada, loves being the captain. And I'm not saying he doesn't necessarily, but I think everything that's kind of gone on, bigger picture, with him winning the gold and not having kind of a hero's welcome in Ottawa because of everything else going on, has kind of changed I'd imagine how he perceives Ottawa, and everything going along with it. At the same time, as I said before, winning cures all. But it is an interesting thing that you've mentioned with Quinn Hughes, Austin Matthews, Brady Tkachuk. Do you want the best player on your team in a Canadian market to be American? Do you want your captain to be American? I'm not one that really cares about that too much. That's not, but I do think with everything else going on, I think it matters more than I would have said 4 years ago or 2 years ago. I think it is a good question to ask and a difficult answer to have. I think moving forward, I think a lot of Canadian teams have to be mindful of who they draft up high. If you're a Winnipeg, if you're in Ottawa, if you're maybe even a Calgary, and you're at the top of the draft, like for example, this year, right? There's not a ton of Americans that will probably be like the first or second overall pick, but if it's the fourth overall pick and you're the Canucks and it's you and it's a Canadian from Burnaby versus a guy from, South Dakota. Maybe it's better to have a Canadian be there who wants to probably understands what it's like to grow up in Canada and being a captain and et cetera, or just being a really good player or star player on a Canadian team. So I think it's going to matter more. And I think it's going to be not the same, but maybe in a similar kind of way of viewing it as how teams look at drafting Russian players. I think for Canadian teams, you drafting an American, it's a bit more of a bet, and you have to be more calculated about it, especially higher up in the draft, just with their willingness to stay in Canada.
Like for me, it's always been take the best guy available, regardless of country or whatever. Because the Canucks, obviously, they're gonna have a top 3 pick. They can't go lower than 3 with where they are in the standings at the moment. And there's a debate of if you have the first overall pick, do you take McKenna or do you take Stenberg? Because the Canucks obviously have similar to Ottawa to a certain extent, have the reputation of the Swedish, Sweden being a big factor for that organization, right? But you guys being Alfredsson and Allmark's your goalie, for us, the Sedin.
Carlson,
yeah. So there's that debate. Obviously, I'm obviously going McKenna, not just because of it's good for business perspective, but that's just again slight Canadian bias. But if they wholeheartedly believe Stenberg's the right guy, then you should take Stenberg, right? Obviously, in this case, obviously they don't have political issues, but Canada, Sweden, that I know of. But yeah, with the U.S. side of things, in my opinion, Quinn Hughes was the right choice for captain. I think in my opinion, Matthews and Brady Tkachuk were the right choice for captains, just the way they are. Yeah, it just sucks that now you have to play again, we're not getting into the politics here, but the political, that we have to include that for just a game of hockey is kind of crazy to me. In my opinion, like you said earlier, winning cures all. So if what you project happens, that Ottawa is going to be a good team next year. And why would Brady Tkachuk want to leave? Yeah, he might do what Matthew Tkachuk did and leave Calgary when they made the playoffs and made the second round, if I'm not mistaken, that year. Sure, obviously that's his right. But at the end of the day, at least show him a product that you are winning. Similar to Quinn Hughes, we were not showing him a product of winning. So why would he want to stay here? I know a lot of Canucks fans have whatever they feel about him because, he wasn't a good captain, blah, blah, blah. My mindset when that trade happened was listen, he made the playoffs twice. One was in his rookie year and then 2 years ago. And then you guys just couldn't figure it out from there, right? So for me, ultimately, when it comes down to this discussion, it should be about winning, about hockey overall. Hopefully the politics doesn't come into it. I'm not even hockey politics, just politics in general.
Sure.
But that's just my belief on it. I think you feel the same way to a certain extent.
Yeah. Exactly. But I think in a year from now, who knows? Who knows with the world right now? But it might have a different tenor to it, right? It's not fresh off the Olympics, everything else that surrounded that with the Olympics as well. Yeah. I think, the dust will settle. at the same time, as you said, um, there's a reason why Brady stayed for 7 years and signed that contract versus Matthews signing for 3, or,
Yeah.
kind of a bridge deal, right? So they're different people and different. And I think at the end of the day, if the Senators are really good, it's harder for him to leave, because I think if you're him and you say, in the summer of 2027, Tim Stützle is going to be near a top 5 center. He's going to be top 10, give or take. I think Jake Sanderson might be outside of the Schaefers, McCarrs, Quinn Hugheses. I think he's in that next level, and he could be kind of, maybe the stats don't, like, I don't think he'll ever be a 100-point defenseman or 90-point guy. Maybe 80. He could maybe be a point per game guy one day, but his overall impact on winning games is just so high because of how good defensively is. So you have those guys, they're signed for forever until the 2030s. They're only getting better. They're only 23, 24, 25. Like, they're only scratching their surfaces. Like, what other teams have that? Then you have all these center depth. You have Thomas Chabot waiting in the wings, right? We'll see what Yakimchuk is. He could maybe be like a Evan Bouchard light. Like, there's a lot to like with this team moving forward, and a lot of security with most of their players outside of a couple. So again, I think winning cures all. And I think the Senators hopefully can get in, because I think they deserve to be in, like Tim Stützle said, like, we deserve to be in a playoff spot. The Senators deserve to be in a playoff spot. It's just been a crazy year from hell. And if they were in the Western Conference, they'd be, or if they were in another division, they'd either be by far the first wild card team, or they'd be leading the Pacific Division. So yeah. It's just a weird year.
Okay, I want you to expand on Yakimchuk a little bit, because obviously he made his debut. Good start to his young career. Obviously, I think I don't know if it did, like, I heard rumors that he was the Senators reached for him to a certain extent. But what would you call it? Like, how if they do make the playoffs and they have to rely on him, how is he as a player? How do you think he will fare when it comes to this late stretch plus potential playoff setting?
Yeah, he's clearly not ready defensively for the NHL, and I don't know even if he will be in the next year or two. Like, he isn't the greatest skater. He doesn't have the greatest hockey mind in his own end. But what he does have is unbelievable shot, unbelievable hands for defensemen. He can read the game offensively. He's big, physical, huge kid, like 6'3", 210, 220. I don't know what he is exactly right now, but big, thick kid. And you can see how that translates to the playoffs. I think you look at, the hope is, even if he gets into the vicinity of an Evan Bouchard type, that's the kind of player the Senators want. And people don't, Bouchard has a lot of flaws, and people know about it, but he's been unbelievable in the playoffs. And like Bouchard, the kid has a lot of confidence, and sometimes that you get burned by it. But in his first NHL game on the power play, does a between the legs, no look pass to Tim Stützle that leads to his first career assist. And then he walks down and rifles a shot home in the second period. That's his first and second period as an NHLer with a goal and an assist, and 2 pretty beautiful ones in that as well. So the offense is there. It's just, can he read the game? Can he skate well enough in defensive zone? Is his gap control good enough to play at the NHL level? I don't think it is right now. He might be a factor in the playoffs just because of how banged up their blue line is right now. And clearly, I think his offense is NHL ready. So I think the Senators have a good one in them. And the problem is, you look at that draft and they picked him over Parekh, they picked him over Dickinson, they picked him over Bouillon, they picked him over a ton of really talented guys. So if he doesn't have a good career, you look back and say, what the heck? Because you had all those guys right there. So in the end, I think the talent's there. I think he still needs some time to marinate in the AHL, and we'll see how he kind of turns out. But I think he's a promising young prospect with a couple deficiencies that will kind of make or break his ceiling as a player.
All right, a couple things before we wrap it up here. First bit here, the trade deadline. How do you think that went? Do you think they should have maybe done more, addressed more things? Where there maybe some discussions behind the scenes that they tried to get someone and just couldn't fall through. Do you think they should have done more to help this late stretch here?
I mean, in retrospect, I think they should have got another defenseman. I think they were linked to Justin Falk for a long. Like I heard about them being linked to Falk in like November. Now they didn't have their pick; they got it back eventually, but they weren't going to trade a 2027 pick for Justin Falk. They just didn't have the capital, and I think it was the right decision in the end. I think getting Warren Fogel's been great. That he has 5 goals, I think, in his first 11, 12 games as a Senator. Just really fast. He has another year left on his contract. He'll be a really good player if they make it to the playoffs and into next season, and gave up a second. I think they knew they were getting their first round pick back because they traded their second this year. I think you only do that if you knew, but Steve Staios would not tell you that on the record. And especially when I asked him, he didn't say anything. I think I would have liked them to have added another depth defenseman, just like an Igor Zamula. I'm just thinking of that guy because I was watching Columbus, like that kind of player, like nothing crazy, but's played in the league, has experience. And unfortunately, since literally the day after the deadline, Sanderson gets hurt, separates his shoulder. A week later, Nick Jensen tears his knees out for 6 to 8 weeks. 2 weeks later, Shabbat gets injured. Then they have Gilbert and Thompson get hurt. So they went to their 10th and 11th, on the defensive depth chart by this week, within 2-3 weeks of the deadline. If that was 2 or 3 weeks earlier, the Senators probably would have done more, but just unfortunate. But I think Staios had a good deadline and did the right thing and didn't overpay. Got a serviceable guy in Fogel who's really worked out, and now he has his first round pick as well.
Lastly, Travis Green, the head coach. I mean, I think with all the injuries he's dealt with, obviously we know his time here from Vancouver. When we talked last year, we said that he was dealt a bad hand to a certain extent with what he had to deal with. He obviously learned a lot. Every coach has their own flaw. Like, why are you playing this guy over this guy? That's in any sport. Talk to me about him, how he's because he learned a lot from Vancouver, obviously clearly taking a step forward again this year with Ottawa. How is he in the fan, like perceived in the fan base? How is he as a job you think he has done so far? And obviously he's not going to be in consideration at the end of the day, but like the Jack Adams Award, like he should be at least getting some sort of vote. Maybe not a first place vote, maybe a 5th place vote, whatever it is, but should be in consideration.
Yeah, I think he should be in the conversation. If they make the playoffs, I think he should be one of the nominees, in my opinion, because the injuries they've dealt, the terrible goaltending that they've had, all the stuff off the ice that they've had to deal with, and I wrote this for Sportsnet. Like if you do the objective Dutto-meter of games, the Senators rarely have just a half-ass performance. Sometimes it doesn't go their way, but you never question, okay, did this coach prepare this team? Is this team trying their best? Have they checked them? All these things. He's been unreal. The analytics, love him. I don't think all of it is as real. Like I don't think their analytics are good. Like the team itself is as good as their analytics suggest, because their analytics suggest they're the second or third best team in the league. Like from shot suppression to shots created to the differential to expected goals, blah, blah, yada, yada, yada. I think they're probably closer to like a really good top 10 team in the league. And I think Travis Green deserves a lot of credit. I think he should get Jack Adams votes. I don't think he'll win the award, and I wouldn't vote for him number 1, but I think he should be getting a ton of votes. And if I had a vote, he'd be in my top 3 or top 5.
Very quickly, who's your Hart winners this year? Because with how close the race has been between Kucherov, McDavid, McKinnon, Werenski, even if you want to throw him in there. But yeah,
I was gonna go Celebrini.
Yeah,
when San Jose was in a playoff spot. I think if San Jose likely doesn't make it, I'd probably go with Kucherov. I just think the discrepancy between him and the next guy on the Lightning, Gensel's a really good player. They have a lot of really good players, but he's just so phenomenal. And, I think unfortunately for Nathan McKinnon, you have Cale Makar there like that. Yeah. To me, that it's not his fault. It's like, you guys are basketball guys. It was like the years with Steph Curry and Kevin Durant on the same team. You can't really pick either of them for MVP just because they're so good together, and it's kind of hard to judge which is which. So for me, if San Jose makes it, and if the Islanders make it, I have Schaefer and Celebrini really high up there. But probably Kucherov is my number 1. I
All right.
probably will have a vote, so this is kind of preparing me. But
Okay,
lots
perfect.
of
Yeah,
time
I had a feeling. That's why I wanted to
decide.
ask you what your
Yeah.
mind thought process with that. But Alex, once again, man, appreciate brother for hopping on. Before we let you go, as always, shout out wherever people can find you. I know you have the Sick podcast, you have your personal podcast, and obviously the work at Sportsnet.
Yeah, just follow me on Twitter, Alex Adams BTP underscore at the end. Just I'm at Sportsnet. I write about the Ottawa Senators. I have a podcast called the Sens Spotlight Podcast with the Sick Podcast Network. I'm with Pierre Maguire most games, recapping Sens games. I just had Elliot Friedman on my show last week, which was really cool. So come check it out if you have any Sens stuff, especially if they make it into playoffs. But thanks again, guys, for having me on.
Once again, all of Alex's links will be in the description down below. Make sure you guys check him out. And for everyone that is watching, we appreciate you guys. Comment your thoughts down below about the Sens season, and we'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.